Okay, thanks a lot. So, xin chào. Good morning, and in my country where I live, bon dia. Can I just start by saying I'm so excited to be here in this city for the first time, my first time in Vietnam, and I would really like to thank initially my colleagues here, to John, to Del, to David, and to Wing and her team for organizing this event. I'm so impressed that there are so many people here today. So a big thank you for being here. Well, as John said, I'm a teacher. Initially, and to start with, I'm a teacher and I hope to always be a teacher. But it is so pleasurable to be able to share some of my practices. And at the moment, I'm very interested in children and childhood and what we can do to improve the learning process of young children all over the world in all our educational institutions. So, teaching the whole child. When I say to you, what is the whole child? What comes to mind when I say that? What do you consider to be the whole child? Can you just share your thoughts for like 30 seconds with the person sitting next to you? What is the whole child for you in your classroom? Mm-hmm. So I have my little lucky chicken whistle because, and this is something you could have in your classroom, especially when you need to bring the group back to you. Instead of using your voice, you could have a little whistle of some sort, a little musical instrument. So, what is this thing about the whole child? It's so interesting for me these days because there's a huge drive to concentrate only on the cognitive, to have testing as early as possible. And I think that if we keep doing that, just that, it's going to be a problem later on for children. I've recently had a little boy at my school. He's 12, very, very smart, 10 out of 10 in all the tests, but he doesn't know how to tie his shoelaces yet. Yeah? So I'm talking about social emotional learning and life skills. It's important. So a quality education is one that focuses on the whole child, the social, emotional, mental, physical and cognitive development, which I'm sure you just talked about now. So that each student, regardless of gender, race, ethnicity, social economic status or graphic location, it doesn't matter. It prepares the child not just for what? Not just for... Can we fill these gaps in? It prepares the child for, not just for... What do you think is missing, the two words here? Yes? Great, okay. What else? We have to prepare them for? Life, exactly. We have to prepare our students for life, and as you said over there, not just for testing. Right? Would you agree? So here you see, I'm going to show you the framework from the Association for Supervision and Curricular Development. And you can see that the child will be in the centre, and there are so many other aspects around the child's life that has to be considered if we're going to get the best out of our students. So environment and relationships mould the child's education through life. And children from 0 to 21 are in childhood, right? So it's very important for us to reflect on our learning spaces. What does that learning space say to the child as the child goes into it? And I'm going to show you some photographs for us to just discuss a little bit in a minute. And the other important aspect I think that's essential, as you know, are the relationships around that child. How do we relate to the children in our classroom? How do we look at them? How do we use our voice, our gestures? How do we present ourselves as a teacher? Yeah? All those little tiny ingredients can make a huge difference. So here you see you've got the framework. The child is in the middle. And then you have the health of the child, the safety, whether or not the child is engaged in your class, how you can support that, and how you can also challenge those very, very intelligent children so that they keep motivated in your class. And then the next outer circle you'll see, what's the policy of your school? How does your school see the students and the families that actually come to your school? How is that community, how is the dialogue between that community, right? You can also see how other aspects of life are important. For example, family engagement. In Brazil, where I live, children go to school very early in the morning. They start about 7:15, and then they usually finish. The younger kids finish about 12:30 at lunchtime. And then sometimes they'll have afternoon classes, or they'll go to a language school, or they'll go swimming. They have very long days. And their parents, their young parents, are out working hard to make a living, to pay the bills, and to get somewhere. But I see a distance sometimes between family and school, and even parents and child. Yeah? So whenever we can, let's find out more about the families. When we know more about the child, we're definitely going to do a better job. Okay? There's more to explore there, but I just have 30 minutes. I just wanted to introduce you to this idea. So everything we know about early childhood indicates this awesome capacity that children have to self-educate themselves. Yes? They just have to have the right environment to do that. They're very smart. Yeah? They come with this beautifully open mind. So what are we going to do to help them fill it with beautiful things? I very much like this book. It's called Between Form and Freedom. Look at the title. We don't want to squash our students into a ready-made shape, a form. And also, if we give them too much freedom, they lose direction. So it's getting a balance. As I've said, childhood is between 0 and 21. Is anybody here still under 21 here? Anybody? John, no, put your hand down, John. Yes, there you see. He's going to make sense of it all, this little boy. So children go through 7-year cycles, yes? Born at 0, 7 years old, the teeth start to fall out. Then we have puberty at 14, and 21 is usually the university time, or getting out into the larger world to find a job. Okay? So I like the way that this author, I'm going to give you the reference at the end. Her name is Betty Staley, but I like the way she's organized the 7-year cycles. So she says from 0 to 7, the young child thinks through doing and learns through imitation. And can you see the picture? Yeah? So can you see how deeply, deeply important it is for those of you who teach the kindergartens? Yeah? Everything you do, everything you say, that it's like a little sponge, you know? So it's really important to think about how you are as a teacher. Yeah? You'll not be a good teacher if you only teach what you know and not who you are. Okay? So you have to think about the way you use your voice, the way you use your classroom management, how you organize everything, the dedication that you put into your classroom plan will be a positive result if you put in the careful work, right? It's obvious. So from 7 to 14, the child thinks in pictures and learns through feelings. Now, those of you who teach this block from 7 to 14, you probably experience a lot of different emotions in the classroom, yeah? First and second graders are usually in love with learning, and they're in love with the teacher. But by the time that child gets to about 10 years old, they start to be a little bit more critical, yeah? They might even do this with their eyes. You know when they go, oh. They didn't do that before. But this is a very positive thing, really. It's them seeing the world a little bit more real, as it were. No, not so much like a game and a fantasy, yeah? So it's like a slow awakening. So we have to be very sensitive, I think, to this age of child, you know, 9 and a half, 10 and a half. And to counterbalance this difficulty that they sometimes have with friends or school or fears, we should show them that the world is a beautiful and positive place. So our words that we use to encourage them to learn English are vital for their healthy well-being and their learning. And then from 14 to 21, the young person thinks conceptually and learns through intellect. Yeah? This is the age where students are able to take on a larger amount of knowledge, and also it will make more sense for them. So what happens sometimes in Brazil that I see, and you know, it can be okay for some students, but I do see schools teaching the solar system to some very young children. And it's beautiful, the planets and the sky and the stars, but in terms of really understanding the distance of the universe, they still don't know the distance between school and swimming classes. Yeah? So let's try and be connected to childhood development in order to be a little bit more efficient. So the word kindergarten, yes, it means children garden. And I love this approach. I think that's why I called my school the secret garden, because students really do learn best when they're involved in imaginative play, where they have stories, music, games, yeah? Because that's part of learning when you're a child. Play is the work of the child, okay? So let's have a look at some classrooms now. What do you think? We can just shout out the ideas. Perhaps it's a Montessori classroom. It could be that other methodology from North Italy, Reggio Emilia. Could be a Steiner classroom. What are the things about this classroom that you like? You like the space? Yes, and the light coming through the window, yes. What else can you see here? The comfort. It's kind of a little bit homely, isn't it? Can you imagine how lovely that must feel for young children to be in a homely school environment with plants, with different places to learn, little quiet table for reading, lying on the floor for drawing. It's definitely a space that has considered the whole child, in my opinion. It's perhaps quite far away from our reality, but we can aspire to something of it, can't we? Now here, this one's probably British or maybe North American, I'm not sure. But what do you think about this one? Yeah, cluttered. How do the students feel in this classroom? Yeah, there seems to be a lot of information, right? It's like, oh my God, I have to learn everywhere I look. There's a word or something. It makes them tired. It takes away their vital energy if there's nothing to imagine. Yeah? I know that we want our children to learn English really well so they can pass exams, so they can study abroad perhaps, so they can get ahead in life. But if we don't concentrate on early childhood development, then that's going to be wasted. We're going to be full of kids who don't know how to tie their shoelaces, right? This is a typical classroom in Brazil for teenagers. We do have light, but what could you say about this classroom? Yeah, there's nothing in it that tells you about the students, right? There's no work on the walls. It's very form. It's a form class, isn't it? So what could we do to make this more human, this classroom? What would you do? Would you open the windows, let the green in, yeah? Put some of the students' work on the walls, even if you have to put it and take it away. If I'm in a classroom like that, I'm going to take some flowers, put on my desk. Just one tiny little gesture can make a huge difference. And you can see it in your students' faces. Now, this might be a very poor classroom, but for me, I think I'd like it more than this and this. Yeah? So it's all relative. So on Monday morning, when you go back to your classroom, look at it and think, what could you add or change or something special in it that makes it a class where your kids really want to come in and learn with you? So here's another little question. Okay? What do you think about childhood these days? What are our main challenges? What do we think about childhood? Is it going okay or is it rushed? Yeah, it's a bit rushed, isn't it? Wouldn't you agree? Yeah. And it's a virtual learning reality for our students too. And that also makes it fast-paced. I was talking to some teachers earlier about classroom management. This is also a challenge because kids are changing. They don't want to sit down the whole time with the books. They are telling us what they need. We have to listen, right? So we have to change our teaching practices in order to, in order to keep them going, keep them motivated. So parents used to say things like this: don't take things that aren't yours. Clean up your own mess. Share everything and don't hit people. That was what our parents said to us. And now, particularly the parents in my reality, especially young parents who are busy parents, who don't really have time to read about childhood development, they often say things like this: he walked before he was 1. Genius child. She's so intelligent she knows all her numbers. She might know her numbers by rote learning, but does she know her numbers forever? There's a difference. She can read already. Yes, he could write his name at 3. Yeah? So the efficiency of learning is not just memorizing stuff. Yeah? Don't we want our students to be lifelong learners? Don't we want our classes to be memorable? Yes, I think we do. So the child has everything it needs already within it in order to unfold its beauty. So think about it. Would you rip open the leaves of this bud to get to the flower before it opens itself? Yeah? So we need to get back into touch with the timing of nature. And our primordial instincts with that, I think, are very lost these days. We need to halt the current belief that we can quicken the human potentialities before the child can actually do them for themselves. And they can. They're amazing when they get the space and time to show you who they are. Kim Simpson, she wrote in this book, it's called Too Much Too Soon. I'll give you the reference. I'm always reading about how we can protect childhood, yeah? Because it's the beginning of everything. If something goes wrong in childhood, it carries on with us our whole lives, right? So we really don't want children who look like this. And I see them a lot in my classes. Sometimes I see them at lunchtime before they come to my school. I look at their plate. Just meat, potatoes, rice. No colour, no lettuce, no tomatoes, no carrots. Yeah? The busy lives that we have are robbing these children of their health. They go to bed too late. They're on internet the whole time. They're not eating well. They're not taking enough exercise. If we are educators, we really do have to spread the word about the importance so that we do have children who are motivated, who look active, who keep that little sparkle alive in their eyes, right? Those are the kids, you know, that we want to see in our classrooms. And another little thing, this is something I try to do a lot in my school, especially when we have the circle time activities. I have children from 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 and 10 together so that the older students learn how to help the younger students. Now, since I've only been in Vietnam a few days, but I see something that makes me so happy. I see the love and the care that Vietnamese families show to their children. Yeah? I see grandmothers kissing and hugging the granddaughters. I see fathers playing with their little sons. This is something that should never be lost, should never be taken away for this modern life that we live. Yeah? So give that value. It's really important for education. So here's a picture from my little school. As I've said, I live in the south of Brazil, and I've had this language school, just English language school, for 16 years now. And it's really important for me as a teacher trainer and as a writer for primary that I have this language laboratory where I can try out ideas and also learn from my children. This is a playtime moment, and this is a moment where I don't give them a lot of materials to play with. They might have some rope, some cardboard boxes, or even something they found from the trees, because I'm very lucky I have a little forest around my school. I'm going to show you a very, very short video of something that happened at break time in my school. Actually, there's one more slide before the break time. Let me talk about the importance of break time. Yeah? Break time does what? It gives children a chance to relax, to run around, yes, to talk to their friends, to play. Yes, it gives them a mental break from the cognitive learning. And it's so very important. Just when I was traveling here, a friend of mine sent me an article which I read about a school in Texas. And it has now increased the recess time. And you can see the results have been amazing. Students are paying more attention in class and working more autonomously. It's very difficult for us to let go of control. It's difficult for schools and coordination and school owners to give the focus, give a balanced focus to the cognitive learning and the element of play. We can't spend the whole morning and the whole afternoon sitting and just listening. We need to get up too. We need to talk to people. Yes? It's the same. Imagine for children. So let's have a look. Is it the next slide, John? So I'm going to show you this. This is something that happened at playtime. One of the teachers came to me and said, Lucy, that looks a bit dangerous. Is that okay? So I went over to this group of children, mixed ages, all really excited. And I looked and I saw that the girl in the tree was an older girl. She was calculating the risk and everybody was working together. So I said, no, I think it's okay. Let's see.
Go! Go!
When I show this to the teachers in Brazil, they say to me, oh my God, Lucy, did the parents see that? Because, you know, we all have the health and safety, but this is risky play. They've calculated it. They're working together as a team, yeah? And also, we had that kind of play, didn't we, when we were kids? Riding bikes, climbing trees, fishing, yeah? How can it be that in a short space of time, that kind of important play has been taken away from our children? Yeah? So it was an eye-opener for me. Obviously, they're not going to do that stuff all the time, yeah? But did you see the joy, the collective joy in the game that they themselves had created. Yeah? So it's giving them the space. It's giving them the whole child possibility. Now, teachers, we are key in the future healthy generation of the next society. The children come to our schools. Yeah? They are with us on a weekly basis. And it's very powerful. It gives me goosebumps. Because we really can make a difference. I think the future of healthy human beings is in our hands. So let's take this responsibility very, very carefully. Okay? Just some very quick ideas of how we can try to get families a little bit closer to our school, okay? Very quickly I'm going to go through some questions that we can ask. How can I gather and use information for parents to improve students' classroom experience? Yeah? Perhaps you can do a questionnaire with your parents to see, you know, what questions and doubts they might have about their child's learning English. What steps can we take to help parents support their children's learning and development? Do you send a song you're working on to home, or a game or something for them to play with mum or dad or brothers and sisters? Yeah? I know we have a very busy schedule, but sometimes we can just send a little something with our students to their home environment. Yeah? Simple resources that we can share. We have this age of technology, right? So we can share music, we can share photographs, we can share the homework for the student who didn't come that day. Yeah? We can give that support to families. We can also make parents feel welcome in our school. Be visible as well, so that they can come in and ask us questions, show the families that we're working with that we are up to date with our knowledge about education. And I think that when we can get parents into our schools to give them workshops about different learning developmental stages, I think that's really helpful for parents who are so busy. I think we can show them that we support them. Yeah? So schools have this important role to play. And in some way, like I've talked about, perhaps we can also have some sort of cultural renewal where parents really understand their children more. Not just love, but understanding. And schools can act as a focal point for communities to come together and engage, yes? I've already met different nationalities in Vietnam. It's so lovely to see different nationalities in schools all teaching English, yeah? Have you ever had that cultural evening where you share different recipes from different places? So much more we can do. So I'm going to finish now just with a little tiny story about this student of mine, Maria Luisa. You can see her there. When she was 7 or 8, she's a very, very smart student, but she was very fiery. Sometimes she'd get very angry and storm out of the classroom, stamp her feet. Yeah. And I kept a very close eye on her. I spoke to her parents a lot, and I spoke to her because I thought she's smart enough to understand the things, you know. So when she was about 8 years old, she gave me this little note one day for my birthday. Happy birthday for special teacher. You is a very, very important in my life. Now, ask me, do I care about the verb to be here? I don't. The message is much bigger than that. And as we went through, she's now 20. She went through the whole school. She did the first certificate with us. She's now going off to university. And I recently just sent her a little WhatsApp message. Maria, I'm going to Vietnam. And what was that piece of music that you used to like? And I asked her a question. She answered. And then I told her, I said, you know what? Is it okay if I show your little message from when you were 8? She said, yes, okay. And I said, Maria, do you know what? You're always with me wherever I go. That's my big teacher lesson, right? This is what I get back. And she went, ha, 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 you is. I can't believe I made that mistake. Because she's really good at English now. And then, a few seconds later, I get this message. You still are very important. So she's left my school and she's gone off into the world. But I have marked her life. And if I mark one student out of 1,000, that's okay for me. That's okay. Here are the references, if you'd like. These are the books that I think have changed my teaching on many different levels. Perhaps in years to come, I might be onto a whole nother set of books. But I do like books that teach us about life. Yes? And about the potential of human beings. Okay? Great. So, thank you very much indeed. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thanks. Great.
Thank you very much, Lucy, for the presentation. And now, could you please help me to give another big hand, please?
Thank you.
And now it's time for the second plenary, so please welcome David on stage.
Testing, testing. All right. Okay, hello everyone. Or aloha, as we say in Hawaii. We got a nice group over here, a nice group over here, a group here, and I think we're live streaming too, so welcome to our virtual participants as well. I was thinking of this just a minute ago. I come from a really small town, smaller than the number of people in this room. So this feels like a big group to me. This is bigger than the town I grew up in. So, where are we at? So my topic is one of the 21st century skills. And this is a topic that has been it's been a kind of a buzzword lately. We hear a lot about critical thinking. We probably feel it's important. We may or may not be doing it. So it's a topic that I think, as a materials writer, which is what I spend most of my time doing, it's something I'm constantly trying to get more in the materials and encourage teachers to implement into their teaching. So, a little cartoon there. I'm not being serious there. I don't expect you to do exactly as I say. Be a critical thinker. If you do something different from what I say, I will respect you as a rule breaker. But this is what we're going to talk about in our very short 30 minutes. It's such a big topic. 30 minutes is all we have. The importance of critical thinking. We're going to define it. We're going to think about the challenges that we have as teachers trying to implement this. We're going to look at a variety of different critical thinking tasks, try to identify what critical thinking skill a particular task has, and we'll end with a few classroom applications, okay? I was also thinking, this is my 32nd year in this field. You were asking me, and you said many, and I was like, well, how many? This is actually on my 32nd year as an ELT person. So I started when I was 5. No, it's I've been in this field my whole life. I absolutely love it. I started out as a teacher for a long time in Asia and have transitioned more into training and materials writing. Okay, so the importance of critical thinking. I'm going to start with a quote here by Mr. Barack Obama. He says, "Don't simply measure whether students can fill in a bubble on a test, but whether they possess 21st century skills like problem solving and critical thinking." What do you think? Do you agree with Mr. Obama? Yeah? I certainly do. He's talking a bit about assessment here and saying we have to move beyond multiple choice tests if we're going to test the whole student. That's only part of maybe what is important in the testing. And so it's very difficult to test critical thinking with multiple choice tests. So, I'm going to give you a little quiz. Right now, fake news is something that, certainly in the United States, I hear it almost every day. With the internet, with the ability to share through social media, maybe forgetting the original source of a photograph or a story, it's not always easy to know if what you're seeing or reading is true or accurate. We were always taught if it's just because it's written down does not make it necessarily true. So, what do you think about this photo? Do you think it's a real photo or a fake photo? Just a guess. You think it's fake? I have 6 photos. Let's see how many you can get correct. This is fake. Does it look real? Yeah, except maybe the shark's a little big, but yeah, possible. You might have seen this and said, you know, if you see it, there's no reason to question it. Let's try another one. That one's real. Does it look real? It's a little, we call this an optical illusion. The water is so clear in the shadow there, it makes it look like it's floating. Does it look real? Does look real. Do you think it is real? Yeah, it is fake. I don't know why someone would create this photo, but somebody did. I don't know why. But somebody with Photoshop, they create a photo for whatever reason they want. And once it's spread around, and we often don't even know if it's real or fake. Sharks in the water, in a shopping mall that was flooded. Sharknado. Let's hope it's fake. It is fake. How many say real? How many say fake? The reals have it. Very good. Last one. The monster cat. This one's fake. That's a pretty big cat. That's a pretty big cat. But again, why does somebody create these photos? Well, that's another question. So, the importance of critical thinking. This company, a learning company called MindEdge, they said the inability to tell the difference between true and false information online is a problem. A couple reasons. 50% of millennials get their news pretty much only from social media. That's where they get their news, social media. That's it. Not from newspapers, perhaps not from respected magazines. And more than a third of these people have accidentally shared false information online. A story or a photo. We share things all the time. We're always share. Have you ever shared anything that you later found out was false? Has that happened to you? It's happened to me. And then it's very embarrassing. Somebody calls you out and said, check your sources. I'm like, oh, sorry. And then it's like, you're kind of embarrassed in front of all your friends online. But it happens very, very often. So we have to be very careful of this. So in this climate, I think the idea of critical thinking is more important than it ever has been. Okay, now we haven't really defined what critical thinking is. We might feel we have a sense of it, we might know that it's probably important, but what really is it? So I'm not going to tell you what I think just yet. We're going to do a quick little activity. You should have a piece of paper in your bag, a big piece of paper. A big white piece of paper like this. Do you have that? If you don't have that, some of you have pad. You could use that too, a smaller piece. So let me explain what we're going to do before we do it. So listen carefully to my instructions. When you think of critical thinking, hear the two words, critical thinking. What do you think of? What word comes to your mind when you hear the two words critical thinking? Maybe it's a verb, maybe it's a noun, maybe it's an adjective, an adverb, could be any word. What word comes to your mind? So think about that first. This is what we're going to do. We're going to write that word on a piece of paper. Then we're going to make a snowball with that piece of paper. Like maybe you have a word like this. After you write this, do this. Make a snowball. And if you've never seen snow, this is your chance. So think of the word, go ahead, write it down now, and then make a snowball. Just one word is enough. Don't write it this big, write a big word so you can read it easily. It's okay if you've already written it. Okay, have you finished? You all have one word? Okay, let me explain what we'll do. Don't do it yet. When I say 3, 2, 1, you're going to throw it in the air. Not yet. I have to go through these instructions. After you throw it in the air, pick up a different one from the floor. So throw it up. Don't throw it at me, unless you're really angry. Don't throw it at the back of someone's head. Just throw it in the air and find another one. Open it up. Read the word. Think about it. And then add another word. Maybe the same word, but maybe try to think of a different word from the first word you wrote. Okay? So you all have your snowball? 3, 2, 1, throw. Woo, beautiful. Snowing in Ho Chi Minh City. All right. Try to find a different one. Can you hand me that water? Yeah. Thanks. Okay, so what are some of the words that you heard? Are you able to shout them out so I can hear them? Question, experience, examine, practical, analyzing, critical. Okay, do you agree with the words? Okay. Do they give a full definition of critical thinking? No, not a full definition, but it's a way to get some ideas. So this idea, have you ever done this? Called a snowball activity, if you're curious. Okay, now, here are 4 definitions of critical thinking. Do any of the words on your paper show up in these definitions? The art of analyzing and evaluating, I heard those. thinking with a view to improving it, reflecting on the information received, moving away from surface memorization toward deeper levels of understanding and learning. So reading between the lines, digging deeper when we read. Reasoned, purposive, and reflective, again, reflective thinking, used to make decisions, solve problems, and master concepts. The fourth definition, the act of reassessing or challenging your thinking so that you can think accurately and efficiently. Do you have a favorite of these four? Or do you think they're all pretty good? You like the green one? What's the correct answer? What's the definition of critical thinking? All of them. Yeah, I would say all of them. I think if you put all this together, we have a start of what critical thinking is. It may not even be enough. So another way of thinking about critical thinking is we can break it down into different types of thinking. First, systematic thinking. This would be organizing your ideas into logical steps. So then they're not random. They don't have to be linear. They don't have to be first to last, but something that makes sense, some logic to your thinking. Thinking systematically would be one aspect. Abstract thinking. This is thinking beyond what your five senses tell you. Maybe beyond what you see, beyond what you feel, something even deeper. Creative thinking, this is what I'm going to talk about in my workshop this afternoon. I'm going to talk about more of creative thinking. We could consider this thinking outside the box. And I think this is a very important part of critical thinking, is thinking creatively as well. And communicative thinking, this would be if we, when we say exactly what we mean. We're very clear in what we're saying in our word choices so that the listener understands exactly your meaning. Okay. Some of the challenges we might face. We might agree that, yeah, there's important, but it's not always easy to get critical thinking into your lessons. Some of the challenges that I've heard from teachers would be identifying good examples and resources, trying to find them. And this can be a challenge for me. If maybe I can think of one, but I want to find very good examples, really up-to-date books that really illustrate this as a 21st century skill. So that can be hard. If you create your own lessons, which I'm sure many of you do, you write lesson plans, you might want or need to put critical thinking into the materials. Maybe you have a curriculum, you have a book, and that's great. Maybe the book doesn't have critical thinking in it. You have to create it yourself if you feel it's important, and that can be a challenge. Finding time to cover it in class. I know we're all very busy. We have a lot we need to achieve in our lessons. Time is limited. It's one more thing to teach, and we don't want to take away time from something else that's equally important. Textbook may or may not include it. Textbook that you're using now, does it have critical thinking in it? Raise your hand if it has critical thinking. That maybe the textbooks you're using. I know a lot of you teach young learners. Should we be teaching critical thinking to younger learners? I think so. Yeah. So this is something publishers are reacting to, but it takes time. We just did the second edition of Skillful. The first edition had a little bit of critical thinking, and when we talked to teachers, they said more critical thinking. So now we have much, much more in the second edition. So this is a change that does take time. And the last one is a little bit frustrating sometimes. The education system may not encourage critical thinking, or they may actively discourage it. If you have critical thinkers, it can be very powerful. It means you're challenging things from above, and not everybody welcomes challenges. It could be on an administrative level in the school, it could be on the ministry level, but this is what I'm hearing from teachers, they don't really want their teachers that kind of power. So that can be a bit frustrating if you feel it's important and you're trying to encourage it, and the education system may not include it on the exams. So then you can get resistance from the students because if it's not on the exam, then I don't want to learn it. I need to pass the exam. So there's a lot of issues there that can make progress a bit slow. Okay, Bloom's taxonomy. This has been around since 1956, even before me. This is a taxonomy that came about by an educational psychologist named Benjamin Bloom in the mid-50s, where he organized higher level thinking skills into a taxonomy. So the ones on the bottom are lower order, and the ones on the top are higher order. And so this is still very influential and useful today. But what I find is much of our teaching stops at about the understanding level, or it can stop. Understanding would be where we focus on comprehension. We read a text or listen to a listening passage, and we check their understanding of it. They get all the right answers, and we're happy, but it doesn't really involve too much critical thinking. And so I like to see people push up the taxonomy into these areas more and more. And this is something I hope to see more and more of. Now, as a materials writer, and for you as a teacher, when you are looking at a textbook, let me make it a little bit bigger. The ones in the middle here, applying, analyzing, and evaluating, to me, those are the key areas. And the verbs there are actually very helpful. So if you see verbs like this in your textbook, or similar verbs, then that can give you an idea, okay, this is a critical thinking question. Maybe you saw those, but didn't consider whether or not it was really critical thinking. So useful verbs: compare, contrast, discriminate, dramatize, interpret, sketch, defend, evaluate, support, appraise, argue. These might be some of the verbs you wrote on your piece of paper, perhaps similar to these. So if your book has it, great, but not every book does. Here's an example from the second edition of Skillful, where we now have a whole page of critical thinking, because this is what teachers ask for. So the one here is evaluating evidence. So we read about what it is. This would be after a reading passage. We do some exercises. We go back to the reading with a more critical eye with this specific skill. Great, but not everyone has a whole page that you can put critical thinking in. Some books might look like this. This is also from Skillful, but a lower level. So here we have critical thinking, but we don't really tell you what it is, what kind of critical thinking task it is. But all of these are critical thinking. And so it might take a little brain work on your part to look at the question and see what are they really asking here. So this particular reading was about time management, how to manage your time well. The first question says, which tips are helpful, which are not. So that's not a comprehension question. That's a personal question. What do you think? So this would get into comparing and contrasting the tips, and you deciding, evaluating even, which to you are helpful or not helpful, and why. Other ones, we could identify them. These are not in the student book, but in the teacher's book. So I always encourage teachers, have a look at the teacher's book, because there is this kind of information in there that can be very, very useful. Okay, here's another example. This is an infographic that is the first thing the students see in a book. The topic is food. It has some information here about habits, eating habits. On the right, it has some graphs, and on the left, it has some discussion questions. So the graphic, it's an interview of a group of people, and based on the responses, this is what we got, and some questions for the students. How often do you eat out? Where do you like to eat out? What do you like to have when you eat out? Now, are these critical thinking questions? What do you like to eat? Is that critical thinking? It's not. Is it a bad question? No. It's fine. This is introducing students, so we don't have to have critical thinking in every task. It depends what your objective is. But maybe the students do this very quickly, and you think, okay, I want to ask a fourth question. That does get into critical thinking. This is where you, as a teacher, hopefully you have the power to do that. So you might think, okay, what could I do here? Do you think your diet is healthy? Why or why not? That's a critical thinking question. You're reflecting on your own. Why or why not? Giving reasons, supporting your reasons. So you can often come up with your own ideas here. What are the pros and cons of eating fast food? What restaurant that you know offers the best value and why? This one, what is the source of this information? You'll notice that there is no source. Now, we had a source, but the designers of the book took it out and put it in the teacher's book. And we were like, no, we want the source on the page. So this might be something, but we could use this. Now, it has answers. What do you order when you eat out? But who are we asking? It doesn't say. Are they Americans? Is it an international group? Are they teenagers? Are they adults? We don't know. So there's room for improvement on this page, in my opinion. And finally, a task rather than a question. Plan an affordable but healthy menu for your school cafeteria. So hopefully, this is what I always encourage teachers to do. Don't just teach what's on the page. Have a critical eye and improve it, make it more localized, personalized for your students. Okay, I'll leave you with 4 classroom tips of ways to try to get a little bit more critical thinking into your teaching. One is having students work collaboratively. Groups, projects, all of these kind of larger group activities are very, very good for developing the real world skills because they naturally come out of these collaborative practices. If you're trying to solve a problem together, that's a real world application. If you get a job someday in an office, this is what you're going to be doing. A big part of your job will be solving problems. So group work, collaborative activities, very important. This is a very simple one, but I think it's quite powerful. Asking open-ended questions rather than closed questions. An open-ended question has more than one answer. a few examples. We may not always have the same answer, but it's going to be one answer. So if I ask you, what is the capital of Vietnam? What's the capital of Vietnam? Hanoi. Okay. Is that a good discussion? There's nothing to discuss. If I say, what is the most interesting city in Vietnam? Then we have a discussion. We can talk for 30 minutes about this and develop it into an activity. You have a reason to talk. The third one, also a very simple one, asking why. One of the easiest things you can do to add a little bit of critical thinking into your teaching is put the word why at the end of some of the questions. And I like to think of it as a kind of loop. This is what children often do. They might ask their parents why, and then you give an answer and they ask why again. That can be frustrating, but it shows a very curious mind. So my example, Romeo and Juliet. If you're familiar with the tragedy of Romeo and Juliet, we know that Juliet kills herself in the play. So we might ask, why did Juliet kill herself? And there's a reason, because Romeo was dead. Why was Romeo dead? Because he had killed himself. You see where I'm going. Why did he kill himself? Because he thought Juliet was dead. Why did he think Juliet was dead? Because she had taken poison to make it look like she was dead. And we could go on and on and on. Why did she take the poison, etc. But this gets students thinking deeper and deeper. And the last one I have, something called playing devil's advocate. Have you heard the term devil's advocate? It's not a bad term. If I ask you this question, what is the minimum age to drive a motorbike in Vietnam, legally? When can you get a to drive a motorbike here? What is it? 18 years old? 18 years old? Ah, okay. I think it should be 12 years old. In my opinion, it should be 12 years old. Why? Very good. Because young people need to be able to get to and from their schools more easily. Now, do I believe that? Maybe, maybe not. That's not the point. The point is I'm taking the opposite or a contradictory kind of position just to make us have a little bit of a back and forth argument. So this is something as a teacher, you can take an extreme view and the students will hopefully get more involved in the discussion. Okay, I didn't really ask you if you were critical thinkers. You may or may not be. But here's some characteristics of critical thinkers so you can decide for yourself whether you are a little bit critical, very critical, or extremely. They love new experiences. They like to create. They take risks. They learn from their mistakes. They know that solving a problem is very important, even more important than the actual solution of that problem, the process. They're generally the movers and shakers in society that get things done. So hopefully we are raising a generation of more critical thinkers to lead us in the future. We want to have critical thinkers as leaders, right? Is that a good quality to have as a leader? A critical thinker? My leader in the United States, I'm not sure is so much a critical thinker. So this is something that hopefully will change in the future. Okay, thank you very much.